Okay, session 37, The Shadow of Unseen Darkness. When we last left off, our heroes had just encountered the Abyssal, the Lady of Eyes in Shadow. She, showing no sign of hostility, invited the party to join her in drinking tea and gave them an opportunity to speak to her of whatever matter they had come to share with the governor. The circle, seemingly not too impressed with this turn of events, pressed the idea that they needed to speak to the governor. However, the Lady of Eyes and Shadow simply replied that she was the governor's aide and would pass on the party's information. After conceding to share the information with the Lady of Eyes and Shadow, the conversation took a turn and quickly became a heated philosophical discussion on the nature of evil and the Lady of Eyes and Shadow herself, with the heroes asserting that by the lady's very nature of being a Death Knight, she was in fact evil, and that by being aligned with those who are willing to kill the innocent and herself doing nothing to intervene, she was in fact evil and could not be trusted. The Lady of Eyes and Shadow merely protested that the group had no evidence to support their claims and that the nature of death is, in itself, not evil, but in fact a peaceful release from suffering and turmoil, along with the fact that the party, had a few shortcomings of their own. The lady also asserted that during her previous intimate relationship with Strife, he did not find her so repulsing then, and she has not changed since, so why were they persecuting her so? Through this whole exchange, the lady stayed perfectly calm, while the circle of Solars became increasingly agitated and hostile, most notably Gary. In an effort to help ease the situation, the lady offered to light some candles that have a calming effect, along with pouring some more tea. The conversation continued for some time, but it seemed obvious that neither side would budge on their stance. It was at this point that Strife started to feel unusually drowsy, and the guards in the room could also be seen having a difficult time staying awake. Strife, making the pretense that he needed some air to clear his head, moved to a far window, and then, after clearing his head, seemingly unprovoked, attacked the Lady of Eyes and Shadow with some throwing knives. He was able to successfully land several blows, one even lodging itself in her chest and simultaneously cutting the chain that held a black and golden pendant, which then scattered across the floor. Following Strife's initial attack, the rest of the Solar Circle also moved to attack the lady, with Gary drawing his bow and Vart preparing a spell. Meanwhile, the lady was retreating and obviously moving to the opposite window. As she did so, she protested her innocence and her desire to be friends. Her moving words, mixed with her obvious weakness and lack of any hostility, clouded the minds of the Solars, and they found themselves having to resist feelings of love and mercy towards the lady. This was both affecting the expediency of their actions and the accuracy. However, they pressed their advantage and continued to attack as long as possible. Unfortunately, Strife's drowsiness increased, and notably 3 of the 4 guards slumped to the ground, not moving. And so the Solars continued to press their attack, just as 2 hands of the lady entered the room and attempted to attack the Solars. Gary, discerning that the candles had something to do with the drowsiness effect, was making every effort to put all of them out. Meanwhile, the first handmaiden was quite easily dispatched by Strife, and the second, attempting to attack Gary, managed to trip on her own feet, cutting herself and smashing her head against the stone wall, eventually slumping to the ground still, blood pouring out of her. This blood reached the pendant that scattered onto the floor earlier on in the fight, and the pendant then suddenly jumped to life, momentarily filling the room with complete blackness before coalescing as a stream of light originating out of the pendant as a darkly lit image of a shrouded figure with crimson eyes emerged. This new figure surveyed the room while all parties present were stunned and perfectly still. This figure then vanished, only to return later with a large, darkly hooded and obviously armoured figure, whose features were undiscernible. This figure offered the Solars aid, power, resources, shelter, if only they would join with it. With no response from the Solar, the figure responded with, "I thought so," and motioned to the slumped form of the handmaiden and said, as they outstretched its hand and twisted its fingers, "Rise, Bodak." The girl's figure suddenly floated from the ground and started twisting and contorting with an unearthly, disembodied shriek echoing throughout the room. Before the figure suddenly transformed, it returned to the ground with long, elongated limbs, stretched fingers and nails, a hollowed out face, and a creepy darkness slowly expanding across the floor, originating at the creature's feet. The armoured figure, radiating in light from the pendant, then turned to the lady and said, "You have no time to waste here. Complete your business and move on immediately." And at that, the figures vanished, leaving the Solars, Bodak, and the Lady of Eyes and Shadow alone. At this point, drowsiness overcame him, and he passed out. Vart, seeing his friend in a dangerous situation, attempted to drag him into a nearby room, leaving Gary with the lady and Bodak. And that is where we finished. Till next time.